Hello, Eagles Nation. Vincent Foast here, and welcome to a Week 12 Eagles chat. As the weather in the Delaware Valley is getting colder, especially at night, and the only thing colder than the weather currently is the Eagles' offense after the first three drives of yesterday's game. So, yes, not great. And the Eagles, well, they also made some history in yesterday's performance. With that 21-point blown lead, that is the biggest blown lead in the past 26 years for the Eagles. And the only bigger blown lead in franchise history was back in 1985 against the Minnesota Vikings, which was a 23-point blown lead. So in 1985, only 2 more points on the blown lead. So yes, not great at all. The Eagles made history yesterday. It's not necessarily the type of history you'd want to see, hear about, or remember, but it's something. So I guess, woohoo, the Eagles made history in some fashion, I guess. Whoop-a-doo, I guess, right? But we're going to talk about the Eagles-Dallas game coming up in a matter of moments, only on Eagles Chat. But before we do so, make sure you like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as long as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds. You can also find their Instagram in the description of this Eagles Chat video. But now let's get right into it. First, starting off with, as always, the injury update. And on this week's injury update, well, yes, it is not the most positive thing in the world, as we have quite a few injuries on this week's update. And let's not hesitate. Let's get right into it. As we're going to first start off with, yes, cornerback Adoree Jackson. Now, he left yesterday's game with a concussion. Now, this is a little concerning, as Adoree Jackson suffered a concussion for the Eagles back in Week 7. So not great to see him back with a concussion once again, especially as only a few weeks prior, Week 7 against the Minnesota Vikings, he had the same exact problem. So we'll continue to monitor that very, very closely as the rest of this short week continues, as the Eagles play again on Friday. So we'll continue to monitor that situation very, very closely, especially knowing how the Eagles are in the cornerback room right now. It's never great to see one of those guys go down, that is for sure. But now moving on next to another guy in the secondary, safety Reed Blankenship, who appeared to suffer a high thigh injury up on the thigh, and this is something where it occurred later in the second half. He did not return in the game, so not great to see Reed Blankenship go out, especially as he was having not a bad game at all. So again, Eagles getting hit hard in the secondary, and yes, we're not done yet. Now on to Andrew Makuba, which had a very big-time serious injury, who suffered a lower leg injury, and it looks like, as further reports came out from NBC Sports Philadelphia, again, reliable source, got to throw that one out there. He had a fractured ankle injury, which needs surgery indeed. And right now, this puts the rest of his season in jeopardy. Not great to see the rookie have a big-time injury like this, especially as well as he's been playing. Yes, he had some rookie mistakes here and there throughout his play so far this year, but still, seeing his season put in jeopardy, again, he will need surgery. He was seen on crutches and in a boot after the game. So yes, if that didn't say there was a problem, I don't know what does. Not great to see. Hopefully Andrew Makuba can recover quicker than slower. I guess you could put it like that, right? But again, not great to see. We wish a speedy recovery for the rookie Andrew Makuba, the second-round pick. Hopefully he gets back rocking and rolling sooner than later, right? But now moving on to, yes, another injury. And we're finally out of the defense, but now we're on Xavier Gibson, who was injured on the return yesterday, which set up Aubrey's game-winning field goal for Dallas. And yeah, it looks like he had a little bit of a shoulder injury, as his body was seen in a shoulder. I should say more of his shoulder was seen in a shoulder sling after the game. That was observed post-game as he was walking out of the locker room. So again, not great to see. A lot of the Eagles banged up. And this is something where, especially going back, I want to pivot back to that Reed Blankenship injury. The Eagles only had 3 safeties on the active roster, I should say. Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship, and as well, you want to go into the Andrew Makuba area as well. That is who you have listed on the safety area for your active roster. So at this point in time, not great to see. Now as well, you have Michael Carter and Marcus Epps. Of course, Michael Carter was involved in the trade that the Eagles picked up, and as well Marcus Epps, they brought him back, but he is currently on IR. So you have some options. Again, Marcus Epps in that safety position, he can be put back there. But again, right now, the Eagles kind of a little light in that position, especially. Again, Reed Blankenship's injury doesn't look to be too bad, but still just something to watch. Hopefully the Eagles don't have a number of those guys out for a substantial amount of time, especially if they want to keep this defense running on a high level, especially as the offense kind of forgets how to play the sport of football the majority of the time. So not great. But let's get into the nitty-gritty as we move off of the injury update. And you guys can probably already guess where I'm going to start off with in this Eagles chat. And that is, yes, right here with Kevin Patullo and the play calling. Now, folks, I've gone over this for weeks. You've heard many, many people rant on it. And this is something where, I mean, when you look at how this offense is, It is quite concerning. Now, a lot of people are trying to come up with multiple different, ways of solving this issue, and this is something where, bringing in another offensive coordinator, bring in someone like Brian Dable, the former New York Giants head coach who was just relieved of his duties a couple weeks ago, bring him in. Well, folks, the issue that I have with that is you're bringing in, if you again bring in a guy from an outside source, you bring in a guy like Brian Dable from, bringing him, hiring him for a job. My main concern with that is you're bringing in an outside guy who has to relearn the playbook. You just went through week 12. We are past the halfway point of the NFL season. I don't necessarily like bringing in a guy who has who really has to not just completely learn the playbook, but he's probably going to want to put his own type of twist on the playbook. You can't change things at this point in the season on the fly. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't, you don't just have a new coordinator that comes in, things change like a snap of the finger. It doesn't work like that. Guys got to get used to it. They got to have reps. They got to practice about it. So that's my main issue with people saying, let's just bring in another guy. Yeah, obviously Kevin Patullo needs help on the play calling factor. I know that. You know that. Everyone knows that. But this is something where bringing in an outside source, and I wanted to address this first because I've heard this throughout last week, and especially after this past loss for the Eagles, as Eagles fans are irate, and they have every right to be. And this is something where bringing in, again, it's something where at this point in the season, they waited too long. And you still have Nick Sirianni in these post-game press conferences saying basically, well, we got to fix things out. We got to go through this, blah, 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 saying all his regular quotes. Well, we got to fix it. Well, yeah, no crap, you got to fix it. We're in week 12, now going on to week 13. There's no reason that we should still be saying we have to fix it, because if that's what you're saying every single week, I'm not seeing a result. I'm seeing a coaching staff that has no answer. And this is something that I say all the time. I say this constantly. You could have the best team in NFL history on the field, the absolute best and ever. Tom Brady could be your quarterback. You could have, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Best team in NFL history on the field. If you have the best team on paper on the field and you have a coaching staff who has a 2-year-old mentality, that team is not going to go anywhere. I don't see a team that's ready to play. I don't see a team that's on the same page, and I don't see a team that is just together, ready to go. I don't see a coaching staff that even has the ability to figure out and fix its issues. And this is something where, again, just looking at the stats for the Eagles, the last 8 drives of the game, they didn't score. They only had 6 first downs. And this is something where, coming off of those first 3 drives of the game, first 3 drives, boom, 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 3 touchdowns, 21 points, even those extra points, right? 21 points right off the first 3 drives. Incredible. This was something where the Eagles looked like they were going to go on an absolute scoring spree and go crazy in the beautiful Kelly green uniforms to stay undefeated in those uniforms since they brought them back. Well, they made sure that stat went away and tucked in the grave, right? But this is something where overall, again, not great to see. And going over it once again, 107 yards, 5 punts, a fumble, and a missed field goal on the Eagles' final 8 drives of the game. Final 8 drives of the game. That's the stats that they came up with. And going back to the beginning of the game, this just shows how this team cannot adjust. The beginning of the game, when the Eagles were looking like an actual NFL team, they ran 16 plays on their first 3 offensive drives. Again, they stacked 192 yards, 21 points, like I stated before. And after that, you wouldn't see the end zone again. You wouldn't see the uprights again. You wouldn't see squat. Nothing. And this is something where it's not the first time that this has happened this season with the Eagles. This is exactly what happened against the Denver Broncos on that loss. First loss of the season, right, for the Birds right there. That is exactly what happened. The Broncos, they were beating them 17-3 going into the fourth quarter. What happened? 21-7, the Broncos came back and won. The Eagles didn't score a single point in that game. They just, in the fourth quarter, did not score a single point in the fourth quarter in that Denver Broncos matchup game. Nothing right there. The offense just shut completely off, and they were hanging their defense out to dry. They would go out there a 3 and out, or they would go out there and make a stupid play, and then it would be forced back onto the defense where they had absolutely no rest at all, and they would have to, yes, keep the Eagles in the game, which is much of what they've been doing this year, just by going and looking back at the victories that the Eagles have gotten. A lot of that has been because the defense showed up and got the victory. Look at the Detroit Lions game last week. There you go. Another example. Same thing with the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Yes, the Eagles held on and won that game, but still, the same exact issue. It was 31-13 in the third quarter against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Eagles led. The final for that game was 31 25. So yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This offense gets to a certain point in the game, and again, the second half seems to be a regular area for this to happen, where the Eagles offense completely shuts off. Not only can they can't get to the opposite end of the field, but sometimes they can barely get to the middle of the field. They can barely get to the 50-yard line. And it goes to show you how this offense absolutely shuts off. And this is also coming from an offense. Again, I'm going on a rant of a lifetime right now, but this is also coming from an offense that was perfect, was damn perfect in the beginning weeks of the season in the red zone. They had an absolute perfect percentage where pretty much every single time, or not pretty much, yes, every single time the Eagles were in the red zone, they would come up with a score, guaranteed. And since the bye week for the Eagles, yes, it's been not great. Their offensive points per game has been 15.7, which ranks 25th in the NFL. Their yards per game has been, or yards per game, again, excuse me on that, was 301.7, which ranks 24th in the league. Again, this is all stats from the Eagles bye week. Their yards per carry on the rush game, the run game, 3.5 yards per carry they average. That is 26th in the league. That's coming from a run game that was top 5 in the league last year. And on third down conversions, not great either. 37.2%, 17th in the league. They rank. Going to third and short conversions, 3 or less yards is what they average on that. And yes, 37.5% on the third and short conversions, which ranks 27th in the lead. And yes, folks, not great at all. This is something where an absolute epic collapse has happened. And at this point in time, folks, I mean, I was kind of hesitant to say this earlier on in the season, where I was nervous to say, I didn't want to go off on a limb and say this looks like the Eagles team from 2023. The way that they're playing, they're barely winning games. I mean, again, in 2023, you can argue the same thing. Well, the Eagles, they were beating good teams in 2023. They beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Same thing of what happened this year. Again, they barely beat them in Arrowhead, but they beat them that year in 2023. They also beat the Buffalo Bills in an overtime thriller. So, yes, they were beating good teams, but still, you could sense in that 2023 season, as well as they were doing and as good as a record that they had, you could sense that something was about to explode and something was going to go down. And that's exactly what happened. Well, folks, I hate to break it to you, and I can't hold it any longer. I feel that exact same vibe this season. I see a team that is not willing to really address its issues. Again, with the whole Kevin Patullo issue, Nick Sirianni literally came out and said basically, I don't see an issue. And this is something we're looking at Nick Sirianni's quotes that came out on the press conference today. Nick Sirianni stated, yesterday, I felt Kevin did a good job of calling it. Sirianni also stated, obviously, he's going to want some plays back. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to trust that. Now, this is something where you look back at it. Patullo has been by Nick Sirianni's side for quite a long time when he came to Philadelphia in 2021. And also, Kevin Patullo was with Nick Sirianni back in their days in Indianapolis. So, this is something where, again, when looking at this, I see more of that friend type of mentality where he's not going to throw his man under the bus. Okay, I understand that. You're good friends with the guy, whatever it may be. I also understand that not all the issues may be on Kevin Patullo. Don't get me wrong. A lot of it is on the play calling. A lot of it, I mean, again, there's no rhythm. There's no motion a lot of times. You look at the receivers downfield, the routes that they run, everyone's kind of pretty much almost stationary where they're almost all covered. I saw a picture just before recording this Eagles chat where it just showed absolutely how bad the play design really was. But still, this is something at the end of the day where, I mean, when looking at it, when hearing the quotes, when hearing the same quotes every single week in these post-game press conferences, I really don't know how to act anymore. This is something where over time it just gets old, and it gets to the point where I really don't even listen to the post-game press conferences anymore. I look at what some of the big-time quotes are on these articles, and that's it. I don't even bother watching them anymore because it's going to be the same thing that I've heard since the first loss of the season for the Eagles, when we really started to sense that things were not exactly going the way we had hoped. And again, they're looking for change. They apparently know there's issues, but apparently, yeah, we know there's issues. We just don't know what they are. That seems to be the mentality that is coming off of this Eagles team. So yes, not great at all. But now moving on to something else that I also really need to address, and that is, yes, with the offense, but specifically the run game. And some of you may be able to guess where I'm going with this. And this is something where obviously this has been a dip, a fall off of the century right here with how this Eagles run game went from top 5 in the NFL to almost not just bottom 20, but they're almost bottom 5 in the league. They rank at 26 right now, and especially in terms of yards per gain for their carries, yards per carry, right? That's not bottom 5, but it's close. And this is something where, again, the fall off is real. And looking at Barkley, who has carried the ball 58 times, again, we're doing a stat since the bye week for the Eagles. He's carried the ball 58 times. He has stacked 165 yards up, 0 rushing touchdowns, and 2.8 yards per carry average. That is Saquon Barkley. And this is something where overall, when looking at this run game, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to put all the blame on Barkley. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is something overall where the offensive line has not been doing that great for the Eagles, and it's not as good as it was last year. I understand that. I'm going to put that out there. Okay, we can agree on that. I'm not going to be like some of these other people and go absolutely crazy out here. I will say the offensive line not as great as it was last year. You have injuries, especially to Lane Johnson. Even though Fred Johnson has filled in for Lane at that position, is not doing too bad. Your offensive line has been kind of going through injuries in all season, really, going through diversity, many different types of it, right? Landon Dickerson has had some injuries with his back towards the beginning of the season. Cam Jurgens has been having some issues. Again, he was in there, but still, he was having some issues overall. Jordan Mailata has not been having the greatest season in the world. He's made some good plays, but there has also been times where he has been, let's just say, some guys have ran through him a little bit, right? So I will admit, the offensive line, it's had its problems, and it hasn't been as great as it was last year. I can get that. Losing guys like Mekhi Becton, who went to LA and is not having a great year over there, but still, Mekhi Becton was a big force in the offensive line last year. He is not there. That presence is definitely missed. And that is something where, when looking at this run game, I mean, this is something where I also have to say maybe Saquon Barkley is not the same exact player. And this is something that I noticed yesterday when looking at Barkley and how he runs, especially when looking upfield, his ability to choose the right gaps, and not only to choose the right gaps, but go just when he finds the gap to take off. I don't really necessarily see that explosiveness as I saw from Barkley last season. And this is something where, I mean, again, Barkley's not even coming close to that big play. The only really big-time play that I can remember from Saquon Barkley, and I mean the real big-time play, was against the New York Giants and that big-time rush that he had against them and that the victory that the Eagles had over New York at Lincoln Financial Field in South Philly, right? That was the big run. I remember that big run. But this is something where he's had the amount of big plays that Saquon Barkley has had this year, I can count on one hand. And yes, I'm not going to use all my fingers on my one hand because there's been only about 2, if you're lucky, that have happened this whole entire season. It hasn't been a lot. And especially since the bye week, those stats I just read off is not great. 2.8 yards per carry he averages since the bye week. That should say everything you need to know right there about that whole issue. And this is something where overall the question has to be asked. Is Saquon Barkley the same player that he was from last season? And I'm starting to say no when looking at it. And, when you also look at other guys and Tank Bigsby, when he's brought in this, he wasn't brought in much yesterday, but the runs that I've seen from Tank Bigsby, they're different. He seems to come out more explosive, and when he finds the gap, he goes through it. Remember that big-time gain that he had a couple weeks ago, right before Halloween, where he had that 3rd and 29, I'm pretty sure it was either, I think, 2nd and 29 or 3rd and 29, and he converted it with getting a 32-yard rush. This is a guy in Tank Bigsby who really explodes out of the pocket when the handoff is given to him and something where he is able to take it up. Saquon Barkley, that explosiveness, I'm sorry if you don't agree with me. I'm sure I'm making some people angry right now. That's okay. Again, this is just something I think and something I really just have to get off my chest and say, where I feel that Saquon Barkley really just may not be the same exact guy. And looking at his stats yesterday, 10 attempts, 22 yards, 2.2 averaging, and his long was 7 yards. And, when looking at this overall, not great. Jalen Hurts had more rushing yards than Saquon Barkley on only 7 attempts, with having 33 rushing yards. And Hurts averaged over 4 yards per carry, and he had an 8-yard long. And, of course, Jalen Hurts had 2 rushing touchdowns, right? So this is something where overall, we all know the rush game is not the same. This whole offense is not the same. Is it going to be fixed? Well, at this point in time, I don't see any momentum. I don't see any push. And I basically see an Eagles coaching staff and an Eagles team that just said, tells the media what they want to hear. Oh, we're going to fix it, but you never see a result. All talk and no action is all I'm seeing from this Eagles team right now. Another reason why the feelings of 2023 are returning to the chat, which I absolutely hate. But it is what it is, and I hate to say that. But now moving on to another big-time factor of this game yesterday, and you already guessed it. Yes, it was the flags. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some bad calls. But a lot of them were calls that were absolutely typical. And going over it, the Cowboys were flagged 8 times for 69 yards. Now, that may seem bad until you see what happened to the Eagles, as the Eagles had 14 penalties, which accounted for 96 yards lost. And not only were they 96 yards lost, but a lot of those plays, a lot of big-time plays that the Eagles had were called back because of penalties. And a lot of them were stupid penalties, including some, yes, folks, if you remember this one, illegal formation. And there was also another time where Matt Pryor did not let his receiver and did not let his guys know that he was eligible, and they lined up the wrong way, which, again, goes for that illegal formation. So this is something where stupid penalties like that, basically, stuff that just can't happen, is stuff that really held the Eagles back yesterday. Occasions like that just can't happen, where you have to be on the same page. And again, this goes into that same exact thing that I was talking about earlier, where the Eagles do not seem to be on the same page. And it's really driving me up an absolute wall, and something where, again, it doesn't look like it's getting any better. But still, 14 penalties. The most penalties the Eagles have had all season. And again, it's not like the Eagles are a highly penalized team. They're not. But this is something where, again, 14 flipping penalties in a game. This is... You want to talk about unbelievable. I'm trying all I can to keep my cool and say something where YouTube won't take my video down. But, at this point in time, how do I react to this? I raged yesterday, but seeing these stats makes me want to do it all over again in front of you guys. But I promise I'll be good. I won't do it in front of you guys. I promise. I'll save that for later tonight after I'm done recording this, right? But now moving on to the defense. And really all I should have up here for the defense of the Eagles is I feel so bad for you. But no, I didn't put that. I basically put tired. That was what was exactly happening to the Eagles defense yesterday. This is something where the Eagles pretty much shut out Dallas for the entirety of the first half, but Dallas did score right before halftime. And this is something where the Eagles, yes, there was some momentum coming back for Dallas, but they looked like they had an opportunity and they were still sitting pretty as the Eagles got the ball back to start off the second half. You would think that would mean that the Eagles would continue to bury this team and put them away, which is something the Eagles haven't really done all season. They only did it against the New York Giants, and even then, at the very end, the Giants actually got a touchdown and was, it still... Let's just say this. Every game this year for the Eagles, you always feel the opposing team there. You never can feel comfortable. And that's, again, how did the 2023 season feel? I know. I'm sorry, folks. I keep bringing that up, but I have to because that's exactly how it feels right now. And the Cowboys, again, when looking at this and looking at their overall play for the Eagles and how they were able to attack the Birds, this is something where Brian, Schottenheimer for the Cowboys, their head coach, has deployed play action a little under 30% of his past plays over this season. But the Eagles have obviously a strong defense, but they also showed some vulnerability yesterday. And this is something where the Dallas Cowboys were absolutely killing them on play action. And yes, once they found that weakness, they adjusted. Adjusting. Wouldn't that be great to see if the Eagles offense learned how to adjust? Maybe that's why they can barely score in the second half of football games. I don't know. Just a thought, folks. Just going to put that one out there. Trying to use my mind again. I don't know if logic is entering the chat, but it may be. But still, Dallas, they were able to adjust. They found a vulnerability. They found a vulnerable spot, in the Eagles defense. And man, did they take it to them. You look at Dak's passing chart, where a lot of his passes landed yesterday, and they were absolutely murdering the Eagles on the play action. And this is something where, again, coming into this game, the Cowboys averaged 29.6 games, which was second behind Indianapolis coming into this game. Second in the league, the Dallas Cowboys ranked in putting up points per game, 29.6 points per game. Again, second behind Indianapolis. Not bad at all. So this offense can score. So there's no reason you should have let off the gas. Now, I don't know if it's just the Eagles letting off the gas or they don't know exactly what to do when the game moves forward. So, again, not great. and something where I do feel bad for the defense. Don't get me wrong, where there's some bad plays made by the secondary, where there's some blown coverages at times, absolutely. But you saw the defensive line getting tired. The pressure was not there, and something where Dak was having enough time to decide where he wanted to get that ball. And man, he was just picking the Eagles secondary all apart with the throws. I have to give it to Prescott. I can't stand the guy, but he absolutely destroyed the Eagles secondary, and the defensive line was getting tired. Dak Prescott went to work, got the victory for the Cowboys, and evened out the season series in yesterday's contest. But that's going to do it for this Week 12 Eagles chat. Week 12, we want to forget about this and not even be reminded of it for a very, very long time. The first time the Eagles lose while bringing back the Kelly Green jerseys. And this is something where, again, not great to see. But we must move on, right? Jalen Hurts' play before we move on to the final slide. Almost got a little bit ahead of myself right there, folks, but it's okay. Jalen Hurts' play, yes, 27 out of 39 on his passing, and he passed for 289 yards, only had one passing touchdown. His QB rating was 106.55. So overall, not too bad on the pass game for Jalen Hurts. I wish there were a couple times that he'd be able to get the ball out of the pocket a lot faster. There were some times where he did overthrow some of his guys, but overall, the offense, it seems to be all over the place, and is something where were there mistakes made by Jalen Hurts yesterday? Absolutely. But when you're not giving plays, when you can get into a rhythm or any type of rhythm, it's not great. The short pass game was not there. Matter of fact, nothing was really there, as if you minus or subtract off the first three drives of the game. This was something that was an absolute disaster. And again, unfortunately, I hate to say it, when Jalen Hurts was asked about if he is surprised on how the Eagles' offensive woes are coming, he responded, "No, but we have been here before." And that was the quote from Jalen Hurts. So, no, we have been here before. Exactly, is he referring to the 2023 season, or is he referring to last year when the Eagles started off 2-2 going to the Week 5 bye week? But yes, the difference in last year was they exploded out of the Week 5 bye week. This year, the Eagles have died out of their bye week. So, not exactly the greatest thing in the world to witness, not exactly the greatest thing in the world to remember. And hopefully I don't remember this game. I want to forget about it, trust me. Which is why let's move on to their upcoming game against the Chicago Bears on Black Friday, November 28th, 3 o'clock p.m. This will be in South Philadelphia. Hopefully the Eagles can get back on the winning side of things once again, as the Chicago Bears are no team to overlook. They are quite hot at this point in time. So again, got to come ready to play this Friday. Again, that seems to be a lot to ask for at this point in time, but we'll see what the Birds will be able to do. Hopefully they'll be able to get back on the winning side of things once again. And let's not disappoint the Philly faithful. Let's get the link nice and loud, and let's keep it that way for the entire game. Let's, for once, play 4 quarters. Please. Please, I pray to God. Please, absolutely. But that's going to do it for us, Week 13, right around the bend. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Gobble, gobble. Enjoy your food, as you probably will be gaining some weight. I know I will. And that's going to do it for this Week 12 Eagles chat. As always, you already know. Go Birds! Have a good week, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you back here for Black Friday football coverage. Have a good one.